everybody, welcome to another edition of The Drop presented by Discover. Greg Wyshynski, Arda, Öcal. I am not in the Four Nations spirit. I'm wearing an NJ Devil t-shirt. Shout out to my boy NJ.
I think this speaks to the enthusiasm gap between the Americans and the Canadians when it comes to Four Nations. We know that we are on the precipice of global hockey domination. Our time is now. Canada can't even be bothered to dress up for the draft of the teams later on in the episode. The Americans, on the other hand, we know we've been waiting for this moment for years. Shine up the gold medal in 2026 because our time has arrived.
Okay, John Cena, let's calm down. Your time is now. But speaking of Team USA, we will also have Bill Guerin, who's the general manager, not only the Wild, of course, but Team USA for the Four Nations Face-Off and the Olympics, joining us later in the show. But like you said, we did put together our preliminary rosters for Team USA and Team Canada. We'll get to that in a second. But first, winners and losers from around the National Hockey League presented by Discover. I'll start with a winner. I thought the commemorations were terrific in the recent memory. The Steven Stamkos returning to Tampa, Marc-Andre Fleury returning to Pittsburgh. A special shout out to the Penguins social media staff. I thought the letting him cut down the nets after the game while Crosby and Malkin and Letang are sitting there laughing at him because it took him so long. I thought that was really cool.
I was at Stamkos night, as you know. I think our last episode was right before that, and it was such an emotional time. I mean, it was sort of beautiful. It was bittersweet, I guess would be the word I use, because it was bittersweet because obviously there's a lot of people that were very upset that Stamkos didn't end up potentially finishing his career with the Lightning. But the presentation was great. The video was great. The lap around the ice celebrating with the fans was great and just provided a little bit of closure for everybody. Although, as Steven Stamkos told me after the game, maybe you never really turn the page when you've spent so much time in a market and when you feel still that lingering bitterness of a team not giving you the money you think you deserve and basically trading you in for a younger model in Jake Guentzel, who, by the way, it should be said, has made that line with Kucherov and Braden Point better than it ever was with Stamkos because they're a defensive juggernaut and an even better offensive team. So as sad as it was to see that divorce between Stamkos and the Lightning, it may have made them a better team, and we wait for Nashville to become a better team with Steven Stamkos in the roster.
Now, to be fair, Nashville has gotten a little better lately. They finally got some wins. I guess that's a positive. But also the thing is, they go down in most games by multiple goals. Like they just dig themselves into a hole. But they also have a unrealistic low shooting percentage. Like that's going to correct itself at some point.
It should. It's cyclical. I think they're like fourth worst offense team with goals per game in the league. So that is not what an Andrew Brunette team is. And so you expect that to be cyclical and then the cycle back and everybody to fit in. But like when I was talking to the Predators after that Stamkos game, they all seemed to think that it was all coalescing. Things were moving forward. Everybody was feeling positive, and they've not really built on that momentum yet, which they need to because the Central Division is very top-heavy right now.
It certainly is. Now, speaking of momentum and vibes in the locker room, why don't you give us a loser?
I'm going to say more like Bruins, Arda, Öcal. The Boston Bruins, now, they have put together a couple wins recently, but the vibes are off. There's been so much attention being paid to the Jim Montgomery of it all. And here's where I'll defend Jim Montgomery, okay? He took grief for yelling at Brad Marchand on the bench. His captain had a turnover. Marchand, after the game, said, no big deal. He benches David Pastrnak in the third period. To hear the Bruins talk about it, they're all like, no big deal, this happens. The man's coaching for his job. In the litany of mistakes that Bruins management has made, one of them is undoubtedly making your head coach a lame duck in a season in which you really need things to go well with your team. And Jim Montgomery is not the reason why the goaltending tandem of all goaltending tandems no longer exists, and the fact that Jeremy Swayman is playing like a goalie that did not have a training camp with a sub-900 save percentage, and Jonas Korpisalo is not a good replacement for Linus Ullmark. He's not at fault for them signing Elias Lindholm, who's a perfectly good complementary center, but by no means, in my book, a number one guy. And so on and so forth. I don't feel like this is all Jim Montgomery's fault, but undoubtedly he'll pay the price for it, and that's why he's being aggressive. He's trying to get their attention. The man is trying to save his job.
Now, is he the coach that is on the hottest seat in the NHL right now? I would say so, right?
I think so, only because
there's a lot of first-year coaches in the NHL.
There are, but also like some of the other places where you're looking at. I mean, I think everybody you've talked to in Pittsburgh says Mike Sullivan is safe despite what's happening with the Penguins. Derek Lalonde with the Detroit Red Wings is one you look at and say there could be a change there if things don't turn around there. But in Montgomery's case, that's the market where we know the media can really turn up the heat on somebody if it's time. And also the fact of the matter is that management did not reward him with the extension. They're like, we're talking to him about it. Well, that's different than putting pen to paper. And he's a lame duck coach at this point, and you can feel the heat getting turned up if the Bruins remain middling.
Stay with it. Give us a winner.
Cale Makar.
Mm-hmm.
Cale Makar.
Not Cale the food.
No.
Never a winner in my book.
Well, that's not true. Have you ever had a good kale Caesar?
No.
Delicious.
Okay.
Well, it's a Caesar salad, but with kale.
Oh.
And the crunch of it
Why
is...
not just have romaine?
Point being is that Cale Makar was one of 3... Because romaine is inferior to kale, and kale feels healthier. It feels healthier.
Get out of here!
It has a palpable crunch. As a guy who is a carnivore, I need to feel like I'm eating something substantial. So if I can eat a mushroom burger because the mushroom mimics the meat. If I'm eating a salad, I like to feel like I'm getting good roughage in my tummy. And I get more of that with kale than I do with romaine.
Kale literally tastes like something you eat right out of the forest.
I know, isn't that beautiful?
No!
Don't you feel connected with nature when you eat kale?
Please.
Cale Makar was one of the 3 players to lead the NHL in points after October. Now, why is this significant? Well, because he's a defenseman.
Yeah.
And in the history of the National Hockey League, it's only been 3 instances where a defenseman has led or had a share of the points lead after the first month of the season. The other 2 times was a guy named Bobby Orr.
Oh, you don't say.
Yeah. And coincidentally, those were also the 2 times that Bobby Orr led the NHL in points, despite being a defenseman. We're talking 69-70 and 74-75. A lot of us thought Cale Makar, based on last season, could score 100 points, Arda.
Mm-hmm.
What if he goes beyond that and becomes only the 2nd player in NHL history to lead the NHL in points as a defenseman?
I would love it. We're already making comparisons to Bobby Orr. Like, Cale Makar is so good that he is being put in the same category as Bobby Orr, who many people thought was untouchable up until Cale Makar.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And he's actually doing it at a time when hockey is good and competitive, and goaltending is great, and defense is great.
Oh, you don't say.
And there's like a lot more teams. So one might say Cale Makar is doing things that Bobby Orr never did.
Even if I made $88 million, I would never buy Cale. I just want to be clear. Which brings me to a winner, Igor's wallet. He said no to $88 million, and it's looking mighty good right now because he is absolutely stellar. He's had a terrific stretch, a terrific start to the season. The Rangers are rolling. They're one of 4 teams in the Metro with 8 wins to start the season.
Not bad.
Very, very good. And Shesterkin, arguably, maybe not so arguably, is the biggest reason for that. So, of course, he's going to command a higher salary.
They look very good. He bet on himself, and he may have won, especially if he wins another Vezina or maybe even the first Stanley Cup for the New York Hockey Rangers since 1994. What if that were to happen, Arda? Imagine the bonanza that will befall that man. Loser, Central Division Powers, talking about good starts with the Rangers, talking about bad starts for the Nashville Predators and the Colorado Avalanche. A combined record of 9-14-1 through their first few games of the season. The Predators, as we mentioned, bottom 4 in goals per game. They can't get on track offensively. Colorado, the worst goaltending in the NHL right now at a .834 team save percentage through their first few games. The difference between the 2 teams is that Colorado's getting reinforcements. Lekkonen's back, Nikushin coming back. They're going to get an influx of that. They're going to feel a little bit better about themselves. Nashville, as you said, needs to figure themselves out pretty quickly.
I think attendance needs to figure itself out pretty quickly in the city of Winnipeg. That's one of my losers is Winnipeg support. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not saying the team should move. I'm not saying that this is a crisis. Optically, as a fan of hockey, when you see a team that has the best record in the NHL and they're struggling to fill 13,000 people in the arena, that's a concern. Now, I drilled into this. I dug into this.
He's done the research, folks.
And I spoke with a good friend of mine, covers the Jets for The Athletic, Murat Atesh.
Oh, we know him.
So he explained that a lot of this certainly has to do with corporate support. the fact that essentially the buck is being passed on to fans. Ticket prices might be a little prohibitive for many people in the city of Winnipeg to get into the arenas. Also, the season ticket holder retention has been a concern over the years. It was very strong in the beginning, 2011, 2012, etc., and now it hasn't been so. They've instilled new programs to try and rejuvenate that. For example, jersey off the backs, skating with the players, photo day, all the fun stuff that fans would those invaluable you can't buy for experiences, which you can buy for if you're a season ticket holder.
Right.
You get those invaluable experiences. So these kinds of things are being thought of. Optically still, when you have 12,000 and change for a game where the Winnipeg Jets are going, what are they now, 11-1 or
they're insane, yeah,
ridiculous
it's a great
record,
start, yeah.
That is a concern, certainly from the outside looking in.
My next winner, the people in Phoenix, Arizona, who are going to get a terrific hockey team when Winnipeg relocates their next Oh, is that what you're trying to say?
Oh, right. Can't wait.
Winner for me, Alex Ovechkin. Alex Ovechkin's pace early in the season, 82 games, 52 goals, 104 points, and a plus 60 rating, Arda. He's 34 goals as we do this podcast away from catching Wayne Gretzky. More importantly, he's on pace to break 900 career goals by the end of the season. What do you think of Ovi's start?
I love it. I think he's super motivated. The team looks good. He's doing. I loved it. Someone posted. It makes so much sense when you look at it. Someone posted the picture of just Ovi standing like this on the power play, right? And he's just waiting for the puck. And he just does this.
Ovi spot.
Everyone knows.
Yeah.
Everyone understands. We're all in on it. It still happens, and it still works.
And you can't stop it.
It's great.
One more loser for me. People who won't listen to Connor Hellebuyck. We found out this week that Connor Hellebuyck, 2 years ago, made a 45-minute presentation to the NHL's competition committee in an effort to clarify what should or should not constitute goaltender interference. This is a guy who knows a thing or two about goaltending. He's considered to be one of the best in the world. Hellebuyck said the committee listened attentively to his presentation but wasn't willing to move forward with his approach. Now, don't we need the collective intellect of guys like Connor Hellebuyck to help better define the most controversial aspect of NHL officiating in this league right now? I think so.
Yeah.
Listen to the man. He's going to be the starting goaltender for Team USA.
We'll get to that in a second. Shout out to Eric Comrie, his backup goaltender, for answering all the questions that hockey fans needed answers to. That was great content from Winnipeg Jets Social. Speaking of Team USA, yes, later on in the show, we will have General Manager Bill Guerin joining us. Wish is in the festive spirit. He is wearing Team USA threads. He has also put together his projected roster. Now, the way I did it for Team Canada, Wish,
yes,
I said this would be my team as of today.
Okay.
That's how I constructed my Team Canada roster. How did you approach your Team USA roster?
Combination of what's going on this season, what I think will be in place for 2026. There are some guys that are on my roster that maybe aren't having the best seasons, but I think are going to be there regardless when the Olympics come around. And then also just thinking about balance and also thinking about how I want this team constructed. So let's get right to it. Okay. Your top line: JT Miller, Austin Matthews, Jason Robertson, Jake Gensel, Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor, Chris Kreider, Jack Hughes, Brady Tkachuk, Matt Boldy, Dylan Larkin, Matthew Tkachuk. Obviously, these things can move around the lineup. On defense, John Carlson, Brock Faber, Adam Fox, Charlie McAvoy, Quinn Hughes, Jacob Slavin. My reserves are Zach Werenski, Vincent Trocheck, and my goaltenders, Connor Hellebuyck, Jake Ottinger, Jeremy Swayman. Now, obviously, Thatcher Demko would be a name in there as well. The injury this season makes me think that he probably won't be a part of this Team USA of the Four Nations. Some folks on the outside looking in, I had to make the decision on do I want some role players involved like a Vincent Trocheck, or do I want to put the pedal down and just gas it up and go offense. So I thought Trocheck probably makes this team as a stabilizing force down the lineup, which means a guy like Cole Caulfield is on the outside looking in, Clayton Keller as well. And then on defense, I had to make a decision on Carlson, Werenski, and Jake Sanderson. I think Carlson's playing pretty well. They might like a veteran on the back end like him to go along with the players that they've also selected. So I'll go with Carlson and Werenski as the goalies. As the defenseman. Pretty good team. The big question is whether or not you can find enough guys on this roster to play the roles that you need them to play to make a championship team great.
So here's my question about Caulfield. So 10 goals in 12 games, right? So I get your explanation. I buy that because Trocheck's a good face-off guy too. Like he's
a
excellent.
center too.
So
So
that's good. Here's my thought though: does Caulfield make the Olympic team if he continues to have good numbers this season, early next year? Is he an Olympic candidate?
He could be. The thing. So his spot kind of came down to whether I thought Matt Boldy or Cole Caulfield would be on the team.
Okay.
Now Matt Boldy is, first of all, a member of the Minnesota Wild, as is the guy putting together the roster for this team.
Sure.
But second of all, he's a better all-around player than Caulfield. And Caulfield's issue for me is I don't like his defensive game all that much. That could be a function of the team he plays for, or it could be a function in how he plays. But the other part of this too, Arda, and it's a philosophical question, is we've never had an assemblage of offensive talent like this as the United States. Okay, it is scary how good the group that I put together is. You could have 5 or 6 other offensive players in the mix for this team. So the question is, do we do the thing that Americans always do, which is to get brainworms from the Miracle on Ice and say, we're the underdogs, we need to really grit it out and get guys in there that are gritty and underdoggy? Or do we just say, you know what? Let's just beat the hell out of everybody and get Cole Caulfield on the roster and Clayton Keller and just go offense, and overwhelm teams. And I don't think we're quite there yet as a nation. I do think you're going to see some role players in this team. Your Ryan Callahan makes the Olympic team type players. But it would be interesting to see if they went the other way.
Yeah, that's a question that we can certainly ask Bill Guerin, how much role playing plays a part versus offense.
Now,
like
tell me about
Clayton Keller
Canada
either, by the way.
Yeah, good.
Which is impressive.
Yeah. Tell me about Canada, and first let's start with your goaltending.
Okay. What about it? What do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Who's playing goal for you?
But you had Hellebuyck, Ottinger, and Swayman as your goalies.
Yeah.
My goaltenders are Stuart Skinner.
Okay.
Jordan Binnington.
Yeah.
Now, number 3 could have been Sam Montembeault just based on his start.
Oh, absolutely.
He's been really good in games for the Habs. Could have been Adin Hill. He's history Stanley Cup champion, so he's played in important games. I decided to go with Fleury.
Marc-Andre Fleury.
Correct, as number 3.
Okay.
And here's why. I think 2 reasons. I put him in the Ed Belfour 2002 Olympics spot.
Okay.
He's the guy that was celebrating with no equipment with the gold medal on the ice. That was definitely a Curtis Joseph, Martin Brodeur tandem. Marc-Andre Fleury, to me, may not see the ice. He might get dressed for a game in Montreal, out of respect. But if there's one person that's going to keep things loose and the vibes immaculate, and I want that to be my 3rd goalie. So that's why I would select Fleury for this particular tournament.
Right.
I know where you're going. Let's compare that to the triumvirate of amazingness that Team USA has.
Who's your second goalie, Binnington?
Yeah.
That's great because then you get a goalie and an enforcer. But I also think that as an American, I'm all for you putting Marc-Andre Fleury on that roster. I actually hope he ascends to the number 1 spot for Canada. That would be amazing.
Stop.
What about the rest of the roster?
That's not happening. All right, so I got McDavid, Mitch Marner, Sam Reinhart. Of course, these lines are subject to change. I'm sure that you can jumble them how you want. I really put together the people I think will be on the team. Crosby, McKinnon, Marchand. Now, I do like that as the Eastern Canada line. I think that's a really nice touch there. Braden Point, Mark Stone, Alexis Lafreniere, and John Tavares, Barzal, and Mark Scheifele with Connor Bedard as my extra forward. I like Connor Bedard as a choice for a forward. I know a lot of people are like, what about Stamkos? Basically, for me, I think Tavares has had a better start to the season. If you find a place for Stamkos on here, I don't think I'm getting too mad, but I do think Bedard needs to be on the lineup, and I do think Tavares has earned a spot.
Let's be honest. This is a NHL, NHLPA produced tournament. It's kind of fake, right? We're doing it because we can't do the World Cup because we can't figure out what to do with Russia. It replaces the All-Star game. Entertainment value should be at a premium. If Canada leaves Connor Bedard off this roster, what are we even doing? No,
he deserves
you want people to watch this tournament.
Yeah.
And I hope that they have the good sense to not try to play it for serious and be like, we got to figure out how to win the 4 Nations tournament. And I don't know if Bedard can do that. Put him on the damn roster so we can watch him play.
He's going to be on the roster, in my opinion. Devon Toews, Cale Makar, best defensive duo in the league. Obviously, you keep them together. Shea Theodore, Alex Pietrangelo, Josh Morrissey, and Evan Bouchard. Actually, since Barzal is hurt, that's another thing. So if Barzal is hurt, he comes back and has enough games.
Yeah.
I would put him in the lineup because he had a good start to the season. But if not, that's where maybe Stamkos sneaks in.
I'm interested that Dobson's your reserve there because he's not been really good this year, and I am interested to see how both of these teams and Sweden and Finland react to what's happened so far in the season versus previous reputation or spot on the 2026 team.
Yes. I left out obviously Nick Suzuki's not on the lineup. Robert Thomas is injured, so he's not there either. So, but that's my lineup. I think that's a pretty good lineup. I do think that Team USA has the edge, which is why we're not going to be talking about Four Nations until the end of Four Nations on this show. The
thing that scares me, though, like if Canada wanted to overcompensate for how terrible its goaltending is, and folks, it's terrible. They have so many guys on this roster that are accomplished two-way players, more so than the Americans. Like Marner, Marchand, Sid at one point, but not so much now. Point, Stone. Like there's so many guys here that I think are amongst the best two-way players in the league.
Yeah.
That maybe we see the reverse of what we saw in Sochi, where I lost my mind when the Americans decided to try to beat Canada 1-0. Like maybe listen, I'm not saying a team with McDavid, Crosby, and Braden Point up the gut and Nathan McKinnon on the wing needs to like try to be the 1996 Florida Panthers and play the trap or something.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that if Canada wanted to insulate its goaltending by playing a little bit more conservatively, I think you've got a roster to do that too.
And we're very top heavy that can possibly outscore its problems.
Yeah.
I do believe that. I mean, with McDavid and McKinnon on two separate lines. And also, I want to be clear. I think a lot of people are going to focus on Lafreniere and be like, what about him? Like, I think he's had a terrific stretch.
He's a point-per-game player.
And I think he rises. He seems to me like the type of player that rises to the caliber of player that he's playing with. He's playing with elite players. He's playing with great players on the Rangers. He plays with elite players on a best-on-best tournament. I think he rises to the occasion.
And he also performed in the playoffs last year, too.
Exactly.
Which is important as well.
Yeah.
All right.
So those are our rosters. Feel free to agree with us 100% in the comments, because I'm sure you absolutely will. The person that actually has this task for Team USA, and also, of course, for the Minnesota Wild, is Bill Guerin, and he joins us now on the drop. All right, joining us now on ESPN's The Drop, a former multiple-time Stanley Cup champion, both player and as an assistant GM, now the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, and of course Team USA for the Four Nations face-off this upcoming February and the Olympic Games. Bill Guerin is with us. Bill, actually, first, I just noticed in your background, you have replica Stanley Cups. I'm curious, do they give those to you once you win them? Is it like...
Yeah, they do. They give you miniature conference trophies and miniature cups, which are really cool.
Are they engraved? Like, do they have your name?
Yeah, they have the whole team on it and everything. Yeah, they're really neat. They're really special. It's a cool thing that you get.
That's the world's most spectacular shot glass, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's outstanding.
Billy, we've got a ton of questions for you about Four Nations and how you're putting that roster together. Obviously, they'll be announced, in about a month. But one of the things I was curious about for a mid-season tournament, which we've obviously not had before here in the NHL, at least in a bit, how much does performance in this regular season impact your roster? Can guys play themselves off the team, or is it more reputation based, maybe thinking about them on the 2026 team as well?
Well, kind of everything. Look, I mean, the players that we're talking about, everybody has a good reputation. Everybody's an all-star. Everybody's an elite player. So the reputations are all good. We have so many players to choose from in our U.S. player pool. It's a great problem to have. We're just trying to, try to put together the best team, not just, go down the line and best players. We have to fill roles. We have to, guys have to accept roles. Guys have to be willing to do things that they're not normally asked to do. Who's going to play on the power play? Who's going to play on the penalty kill? Who's not? And are they going to be okay with it? And, like I said, it's a good problem for us to have, but there's some very difficult decisions to be made. thank God I have a great group of people around me. Tom Fitzgerald, Billy Zito, Chris Drury, Chris Gallagher, all helping me out. With these decisions, communicating with Mike Sullivan, the coach, and his coaching staff. It's just a really good group, and I'm honored to be working with these guys.
What you essentially have two gigs right now, right? General manager of the Wild, general manager of Team USA. I'm curious, like on any given week, especially as we lead up to the tournament, like what percentage of your time is spent on Wild related stuff versus Team USA stuff? How do you parse that time such that you're giving ample time necessary to both gigs?
Yeah, it kind of, ebbs and flows. It just, things might come up. Things come up with the Wild all the time. Things come up with Team USA all the time. We try to plan our Team USA calls because, we can look at everybody's schedule, make sure we put time aside to do that. But, I can't really say if I'm doing 50-50, 70-30, whatever. It depends on the day, really. And we're getting close to decision time for Team USA. So I would imagine we're going to be putting a little bit more time into that. Like I said, but this is really exciting. It's a huge honor. And just to be talking about the players that we're talking about, putting them all together on one team, all four teams are going to be fantastic. But we're really excited about our group of players.
Two questions for you, Billy. First off, how many spots on that roster do you feel like are kind of up for grabs or in flux right now? Because obviously you've got a pretty solid group, is going to be there. How many spots do you think are open at this point in the process?
Well, we're pretty far down the decision-making process. I don't know because, look, like I said, things can change daily. We don't know, what could happen. There could be injuries. There could be, different circumstances. We just don't know. So we're trying to, we're trying to look at everybody. We're trying to look at, if we have a certain roster, who are the backup plans for that, and how does that decision process go, and just things like that. We're trying to be prepared for anything, but we're getting close to it. I hope that answers your question. Probably doesn't, but
who knows? The other thing was I was talking to Mike Modano recently, who you obviously were a teammate on a couple of national teams with.
Yeah.
And he told me the reason that Canada has been so successful internationally, or at least one of the reasons, is that they were able to set their egos aside. They had all these star players, but they played within the team. Now, you made mention of trying to get some of these guys that are obviously top line superstar players in their own teams to maybe buy into different roles on Team USA. How confident are you that some of these young American stars are going to be able to do that?
I'm very confident. I'm very confident in these guys that, you have to check your ego at the door. And you know what, I feel that happens on any championship team. I feel like we had that with the 96 team in the World Cup. And you just have to do things that you're not used to doing. But it's all about the team. It's all about, we're playing for our country here. This is way bigger than us. Like, we have to do things that we're probably not used to doing, or play roles that we're not used to playing. Maybe play the minutes that we're not, used to playing. Like, every guy in this team is going to be used to getting, forwards close to 20 minutes or over 20 minutes a night. Defensemen, 25, plus. There's just not enough of that to go around. So you have to accept that. And that's a really big part of this.
A lot of the discourse among hockey fans as we approach Four Nations is that Team USA is going to be a very strong team. Dare I say, the favorites to win the tournament, goaltending strong, all positions look really, really good. I'm just curious what the conversations and the vibe is like among you and your GM and coaching staff.
Everybody's good. I mean, honestly, like, everybody's good. You look at the players that Canada has. Look at the players Sweden and Finland have. Like, everybody's going to be good. It's going to come down to buy-in, sacrifice, acceptance of role, and timing. Our timing's going to have to be good. We're going to have to be playing well at every, in every facet. This is a plug and play tournament as well. The chemistry's going to have to be right, and we're going to work on that. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't consider anybody a favorite, to tell you the truth, because you just don't know what's going to happen. The way I look at things too is like, it's just like in the NHL when you look at teams on paper and this team's great, that team's great. Well, you know what? You got to play the games. So let's just do the best we can to put the team together, to bring them together, and then let's play the games.
Last one for me on Four Nations, Billy. You are obviously in a unique position as a GM of the Minnesota Wild and the GM of this team, where you might have a couple guys in contention for this team. A lot of projections believe Brock Faber is going to be on your blue line on Team USA. Some believe Matt Boldy could crack the forward group. How do you approach putting your own guys on a team like this? And is there anything in the back of your head that's like, you know what? Let's not make sure they don't get hurt. Let's give them some extra rest. We're a really good, successful team. We're in a playoff push. How do you balance those two things when you have guys on your own team in contention for a USA roster?
When we're putting the roster together for the Minnesota Wild or Team USA, we want to put together the best roster we can. And we want to win. We need to put the best roster we can on there. And if those guys are included, they're included. And that's just as easy as that. If they're not, they're not. But we'll do whatever we have to in order to win.
I have a fun two-part last question for you, Bill, on my end. We know that Marc-Andre Fleury, noted prankster. My first part of this question is, what was as a player, when you were a teammate with him back in 2009, what was the favorite prank that he pulled on you?
He never did on me.
Never?
No, I think he respected his elders a little too much. So he never did.
What about in general? Was there one that you were
I
like?
liked it when he hung the guy's gear from the scoreboard. I just never knew how he got up there and had that done. I thought that was brilliant. I love that one.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, my second part was, are you off limits now that you're his general manager? But I guess the answer is still no. Like, he wouldn't dare prank the GM of the team, right?
Oh no, he would. I think the guys know me well enough now that I don't mind that sort of thing. So if he were to do it, it would be, I would advise him not to, because I have my ways of getting back at people too. But he would not hesitate.
Last one for me, Billy, and thanks for your time. Great start for the Wild, man. Obviously the Central Division has been extremely competitive up top so far with what Winnipeg is doing. But what are maybe one or two things that have gone right for you early on in the season that you're most impressed with?
I think a couple of things. I think the detail in which we're playing with. I think that was one of the big messages during training camp. The detail on how we operate every single day, not just game day, not just during the game, but my God, when you get in your car to come to practice, when you're in practice, the detail which we practice in, and then I think that just carries into the game, and I think our puck management has really taken a big step. The guys are really playing strong situational hockey. And I think puck management is critical in doing that and playing winning hockey.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing the announcement of the Team USA roster for Four Nations Face-Off in the near future as we march towards the tournament in February. Bill Guerin, GM of Team USA, and of course the Minnesota Wild. Bill, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks again to Bill Guerin for joining us here on the show, and thank you for listening and watching The Drop presented by Discover. Take that off.
No, I refuse to.
Goodbye.
Bye.